A great Roman Catholic theologian once said that the Christian of the future will be a mystic, or he will not exist at all. In other words, if Christianity doesn't find a way to recover its deep spiritual roots, there will be no such thing as Christianity in the coming era. The church, the Christian tradition, will have become a thing of the past. If you go to the store and you buy an orange, you don't take it home and peel off the rind, eat the rind, and throw the inner fruit away, do you? Likewise, if you go to the farmer's market and you buy corn, you don't peel the husk off, eat the husk, and discard the ear and the kernels, do you? No, you eat the fruit of the orange that's inside the rind and you savor its juices. You peel off the husk of the corn in order to get to the kernels. But the Christianity of this present age has it all backwards. It, by and large, seeks its sustenance in externals only, believing that just because it has the outer rind, the outer husk, it has enough. If you have the ears to hear, then hear. But the Christian of the future will no longer be satisfied with simply consuming the external rind of ritualism, liturgy, and tradition, nor will she believe that the outer husk of dogmas and creeds will be enough to satiate her. Not that there's anything wrong with these things like liturgy and creeds and tradition and dogmas, right? It's just that these things are fingers pointing to the moon, not the moon itself. They're the cocoon, not the butterfly. The outer rind, not the inner fruit. The husk, not the inner ear of corn, right? Christians of the future will all be mystics, or there will be no such thing as Christianity anymore. And to put it bluntly, more bluntly even, meditation alone will renew the church. Meditation alone will save the church. Not great marketing or outreach strategies, not revised liturgies or riveting sermons, no amount of youth programs or children's ministries or church planting initiatives or social action is going to save her from coming extinction. And it seems that everybody except those of us in the pews understand this truth. As one of the most prominent Hindu yogis of the Western world noted nearly a century ago, he said that churches today have digressed from the path of self-realization, from the personal experience of God and Christ. And he says that instead, congregations are generally satisfied with sermons, ceremonies, organizations, and festive socials. And those are important things, great things. But he says this, and he's right. The complete revival and restoration of Christianity can be effected only by less emphasis on theoretical sermons with their oft-repeated platitudes, and on external emotion-rousing ceremonies or liturgies or worship services, and by substituting instead quiet meditation and real inner communion. And he says this for all in the church: rather than being passive members of a church, satisfied merely with listening to sermons, worshipers should engage more in the effort to cultivate perfect stillness in both body and mind. Why? Because the peace of absolute physical and mental stillness is the real temple wherein God most often visits his devotees. Or as the psalmist says, "Be still and know that I am God." The experience of God and of deep transformation within his presence, it's always prefaced by stillness. And the fact that multitudes of people today have a hard time experiencing God in church, but they can find God quite quickly and quite easily whenever they pray to him in their own bedrooms. This should alarm us. This should speak volumes to us. This should tell us something, especially those of us who wear these things. Meditation alone will save and renew the church. But not only that, meditation alone will save and renew the planet. The human being of the future will be a mystic. Or humanity will not exist at all. And this was precisely Christ's prophetic message to one of the greatest living mystics and activists of our own day. "One day I was in despair," he said, "at the murder of nature, at the horrible degradation of all things sacred, and at the coming suffering of millions of human beings and animals. But all at once I heard a voice all around me, thrilling and loud as a trumpet, saying, between flashes of lightning and claps of soft thunder, 'I am Alpha. I am Omega. I am the Christ, the first and the last. I am the one who lives within you and who wants to live you completely. I am the living one you are, the saint longing to be born in you, the complete divine human whose heart births and holds the whole cosmos in its fire. I am you, as you can and must become. I am your beginning, your end. I am your original and final face. Worship me as separate from you and outside you, and the tragic and horrible farce of history will continue. Forests will be destroyed, and all the birds and animals will die, and the entire world will become nothing more than an external image of your inner poverty. Nothing more than the external image of the inner desolation that you feel deep down within yourself." That was the mystic's vision of the living Christ. In other words, ecological activism by itself will not save our planet, will not heal our planet. Activism divorced from meditation is like putting a bandage on a gushing wound. It's better than nothing, certainly, but it's not enough. Because it's not enough merely to treat the symptom. We must heal the disease itself. Activism treats the symptom. Meditation heals the disease. We human beings are not at peace with our planet because we are not at peace with ourselves. We are projecting our own inner poverty onto Mother Earth. Out of our own sense of inner desolation, we are desolating her. Just as those of us who are enslaved to alcohol because we are unhappy deep down, and just as those of us who are trapped in a cycle of overeating because we are unhappy deep down, and just as those of us who have the habit of zoning out in front of television and computer screens because we are unhappy deep down, so too do we human beings consume Mother Earth and all of her resources because we are unhappy deep down, because we have not discovered lasting peace within ourselves. My friends, as long as you and I fail to find peace within ourselves, failing to discover the inner Christ, failing to sense and to unlock the Holy Spirit's healing presence within our hearts, no amount of activism will counteract the rate at which we are destroying our planet. For activism cannot heal the soul that is addicted to mindless consumption. It can only clean up after it at best. But if you and I, if we sense God's healing touch deep down within ourselves through deep prayer and meditation, the wheels of mindless consumption will begin to come to a screeching halt. For our hearts will have become attuned to God's heart. And we'll begin to see our world through God's eyes, seeing that everything that he has created is indeed very good, that it is indeed all a beautiful temple wherein he rests. But as long as you and I continue to crucify the Christ within us, we will continue to crucify the Christ in animals and trees, jungles and deserts, rivers and mountains, soil and air. As long as you and I fail to meditate on the Christ within us, we will continue to hand his presence over in Mother Earth, over to the Pontius Pilates of greedy industry and selfish politics. And our mantra will be, crucify her, crucify her. The human being of the future will be a mystic, or humans will not exist at all. As James, that great wisdom teacher from the early church, tells us, meditation is the answer to everything. Another great saint later on in history would echo James whenever he said that prayer is the test of everything. When prayer is right, everything is right. The flip side of that is also true. Things are not all right in our world right now because prayer is not right. But James, after urging his listeners to learn how to tame their tongues, to learn the art of silence, he goes on to tell us in this passage from this morning that prayer, whenever it's woven together with the practice of silence, of stillness, it can heal us of all sorts of infirmities. But he leads off with this whole line of thought by saying that prayer, meditation, can heal us of our inner suffering, our inner turmoil. By opening ourselves up to God, that God's presence comes in and heals us. Not even comes in, God's presence has been there all along. But some will ask, well, how do I pray in such a way? How do I meditate? But that question is just like asking, how do I breathe? And sadly, so many people over the years have told me that they're not good at meditation, so they don't do it. But that's like saying, I'm not good at breathing, so I'm not going to do it anymore. For whenever you and I practice just a little bit of meditation, we practice just a little bit of inner silence, we soon discover that it is the most natural state of the soul. And all of our frenzied thoughts and all of the anxieties that plague us and all of our inner turmoil, these are the things that are unnatural to the soul. My friends, if this helps, what we call meditation today is what the spiritual masters of the New Testament called grace. For the two words really are synonymous. Meditation is an act of grace. It's about embodying grace. It's about taking grace out of the box, right? It's the art of extending grace to yourself, because there's never a moment in your life where God is not extending infinite grace towards you. Meditation is about giving yourself permission to receive the gift of God's loving presence. It's about giving yourself permission to believe in God's grace more than you believe in your own self-condemnation. That's what it's all about. Meditation is the practice of seeing yourself through God's loving eyes, feeling the entirety of your existence through God's compassionate heart. Meditation is the art of abiding in God's abiding in you. And meditation is not about finding God or about obtaining a deeper relationship with God. I mean, trying to meditate in order to find God is like a bird at flight trying to find the air. Or meditating in order to obtain a deeper relationship with God is like a fish in the sea trying to find more water. You can't have any more of it. The fullness of God's presence already dwells within you. The problem is not that God is far off. The problem is it's exactly what Jesus always said that it was, that the kingdom of God is indeed near. We just don't have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. But meditation is about waking up to the fullness of God's presence, God's kingdom in our midst. If you want to learn how to meditate, it's simple. Do as the psalmist says. Practice stillness. Be still, and you will know God. You will know the depth of God's presence within you. And all of life, you want to know what life is about? All of life is about learning how to rest in God's resting in you. Learn this, and you have learned all. This, after all, has been God's dream for Mother Earth from the very beginning, has it not? From the opening pages of the Bible. God's dream has been that everything would enter into his Sabbath, enter into his rest. Creation is not complete without the culmination of creation in the seventh day, where God rested. It means he allowed his presence to dwell within the creation. God didn't create all things so that they would merely exist. He created all things so that, yes, they would exist, but so also that they could rest their presence in his presence, and that his presence could rest in their presence. So, my friends, acquire inner peace. Enter into the blessed rest that is God's presence resting in you, and thousands of creatures around you will be saved. Thousands of creatures around you will find their Sabbath rest in you.